Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Force for Growth Show. I'm Ricardo.
I'm Courtney.
I'm Michelle.
And today we have a very special guest joining us, the one, the only, Mr. Joe Beccalori, CEO of Interact Marketing.
Good morning. Thanks for having me,
Yay.
Ricardo.
Good morning,
Yes.
Joe. How's it
Thanks
going,
for
bro?
joining us.
It's going great today. I'm in a good mindset, and I'm in the middle of the UPW virtual, which started yesterday. I broke a board last night, and
Nice.
building
Yeah,
confidence for the coming days.
man. So this is good. So how long have you been in the Tony world?
The Tony world. I was talking to Ricardo earlier. But I think my first exposure was probably as a young teen watching infomercials on TV, looking at this larger than life dude with all these famous people. But I didn't get my first exposure to his audio programs. It was about 2006 when I started to listen to those. And I did, I think it was Personal Power, and then I did Time of Your Life. And every year since, I've repeated those audio programs just as part of a annual regrouping and planning process. And then live events, I started in 2012 with a UPW in New Jersey, back when they were only like a few thousand people.
I have two questions for you. Of the audio programs, what is your favorite? And number two, compare and contrast firewalking with breaking a board.
Sure. So Time of Your Life, which is now the rapid planning method, that's been my longstanding favorite, especially in business, because it provides me a lot of organizational skills. We tend to get very overwhelmed with a to-do list and a task, and like the theory of it is really just focusing on the things that matter the most and how to go about choosing those, not just from a immediacy, but from a long-term planning perspective, right? So focusing on the things that will produce the best results long-term. And that applies to stuff outside of business, obviously, as well. So the key to that whole thing is focusing on the why. Why are you doing a certain thing? And then, and the other piece of key advice is that 80% of the to-do list or massive action list probably never even has to get done. If you focus on 20% of the items, you can still achieve the objective. So, and that's kind of why I love that one. So once a year, I'll do that, and I do it rapid fire. I go through it like at 1.5x on audio, and just kind of go back to last year's notes and tweak things and stuff like that.
Nice.
Firewalking versus board breaking. I gotta say the firewalk was still more intimidating to me, and still is. Even though I've done it probably 10 times now. There's just, I think, more of a fear of like risk to personal safety and self, where the board, I researched it in advance, and I've seen, even last night, there were like 6-year-olds breaking through it. There were elderly people breaking through them and stuff like that. So I had confidence in my strength. I've also, unfortunately, had in my lifetime a few experiences of what it feels like to punch through something solid, like a rock wall or something like that. This was pretty easy in comparison, but it was still a good mental, breakthrough, like because of the symbolism of, what are you breaking through this year, and especially with all the stuff going on with COVID and the downturn in business and all of that, just to keep me motivated and on track for my goals this year. There's one that you didn't ask me about, which was the pole climb at Life Mastery. And I would say of the three, that's still the one that I would fear the most.
Really?
I'm afraid of heights, and I'm a big dude. So you get up on this 60-foot telephone pole that's swaying like this, and you got to stand up on top of it and then jump out at a trampoline. And even though you're harnessed, it's still the one that frightens me the most, even though I've done that as well.
That would scare me to death.
You're very invested in that one. The firewalk, that's a few seconds, to be honest. A board break, yeah. But that one, Yeah, that's pretty cool.
You've got time to think about it.
Mhm.
And that's the problem. You got time to think about it.
Yeah.
You got time
Did
to
you
talk yourself
growth
out of it.
from that one?
It was so challenging. That one had the biggest impact on me emotionally and mentally. So, because I had to push myself harder to get through it. So,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's pretty cool. So, what is your mission, Joe? Like, what? I was tempted to ask you about work or not, but we're not talking about work yet. What's your mission moving forward?
well, it's all kind of interrelated, right? When we go through these programs, we kind of like bucket things. Oh, here's my work life. This is my family life. This is this. And while I do have, goals of what we say, like life balance, if you will, it's sort of a fallacy, right? So it's really integrating the components of your life in a way that you can best serve. And, so the way that I do that is to try and make sure that when I set goals and plans, it has impact on multiple areas. So I'm trying to grow a business right now, and we took a hit this year. We had probably 13 years of almost growing every year, with the exception of one or two flat years. We had double-digit growth. I was well prepared because I was helping other small businesses as an employee for a number of years. I learned the ropes on sales. I built a specialty in digital marketing, which is a hot skill. But the idea there has gone from just creating a lifestyle business to really creating a high growth business that brings value to me, but also the employees, the clients, right? And so that's kind of one overarching goal. I tend to be a workaholic, and for many years, the business was the main driving force, which also helped me become a great provider for my family and become a contributor to charity with money that we earned. But really, almost like the business was too loud, too high in the mix, if you know what I'm at, right? So about 3-4 years ago, I started to make the shift and to focus on the areas that will matter more, like my own personal health, my spirituality, my closeness to my wife and children. And the past 2 years, that's really been the primary goal. Of course, I want to continue to grow the business, but no longer at the expense of the other things. And it's kind of like life's symphony. You always have to catch yourself out of balance and get back in. And that's really why, repeating these types of events, people say, well, how can you see the same thing 10 times? What's the value you get out of it? Well, it's a different you every time you go. So, and it's really about, what haven't you mastered yet? I mean, I would say, you should never neglect areas of your life to support others, right? And that's where that RPM really comes into. So you always go, what's not perfect yet? How do I make the adjustment? There's always going to be something that gives when you have to give in another area. But if you work with good people, none of the companies I've grown have been just me. It's always been a team of well-selected individuals that hits the goal, right? So being a better delegator, a better manager, that enables me to free up more time for these other things. So as a result, like this year, I've lost 60 pounds already. My goal is 100 for the year.
Way to go.
Way to go, Joe.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's great.
I lost a lot of weight in the past and put it back on. So now I'm conquering that demon of how to not fall back into that routine, but I'm not giving up on it. And then just things like doing more for the family, spending more time with my parents, especially now that we had to go almost 3 months without seeing each other physically. So we've been doing more time on FaceTime. And as they get older, I'm realizing the value of having this time with them still as they're entering their 80s now. And, my wife went through the unfortunate reality of losing both her parents, and I saw what that did to her. So I'm trying to live a life without regrets and act more in the moment on what I should do and make it a must.
that's great.
Man.
So you're you really focused a lot on your family. You have 3 kiddos, right? As far as, your training or the courses that you've taken, the events that you've gone to, and how involved you are with your family, how does that spill over into teaching your children? I would think it sounds like you're a really great example for them to follow into adulthood.
Yeah, I try like any parent should, and every phase of life is different, right? So when they're little, they're running around like terrors, and you got to, steer them and guide them. Now, my oldest is 21; he's a grown man. My daughter's 19. So they're dating, they're both in college, and so like I'm kind of sitting back, like, how did I do? And I'm pretty proud of who they've become, and but like anything else, at some point, you can only influence, not control, right? And that's the hard part. They're not going to be clones of you, and if they were, life would be boring. So, and we've been through some challenges too. My son had a really serious car accident that he had to contend with, and we've had, with this whole lockdown, everybody's been on edge and things like that. But you try and put your best foot forward. So there's times you beat yourself up, man, I could have been a better dad with this, that, the other thing. I tend to get frustrated and angered and yell and raise my voice. Although this year I've been really good with self-control and trying to find, other means of educating and teaching. I grew up in an Italian household, so there's a lot of like loudness and yelling, and that's how we showed love. And I married an Irish girl, so it was a bit of conflict. But we make do. I think my wife and I would agree that we're really proud of our children and what we've been able to do to teach them. My oldest attended a UPW with me when he was 15. I think he found it a useful experience. It's on the option. It's an option on the table for the others if they want to do it, but I don't try and force their hand. And my wife doesn't really like Tony's style. He's like a little bit edgy and loud for her, so she's likely never going to go to an event with me. But she has her own ways, and she's working on herself in her own ways. Especially this year too. She lost a bunch of weight, and I'm really proud of her. And her taking her path in a way that's comfortable for her. So.
That's
Man.
cool.
So
Love it.
you mentioned your wife, you mentioned relationships, you mentioned that she's not really into the Tony stuff, but she's into her own stuff. What would you say to the guy out there who really wants his wife to get involved and start the self-development road, but the wife is not feeling it?
I think self-development is something that has to begin within you. And like I said before, you can influence but not control, right? It has to be the right moment for somebody to feel like they want to make a change. If you remember some of the early Tony audio, where he's trying to convince the woman that is afraid of snakes, right? And the old technique was like, boom, 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 you're not afraid of snakes, whatever. Tony just brings out a snake and has her confront it, right? So like there's things that are effective, but you've got to want to make change. It was like somebody that was afraid of heights, I think, in that same audio program. And when they offered them $1,000 to get on the ladder, they did it.
Yeah,
right?
that leverage.
Yeah.
There's different people are motivated in different ways, and it has to come at a time that's natural for them. So I think the best way you can motivate or influence somebody is not to try and like beg them to go to a conference or read a book or do whatever, although I'll often refer and recommend things like that because I'm a man and I'm always seeking to provide solutions even when they're not asked for. But just show the change in yourself. And I think that's if people witness that change in you, that's going to be most inspirational than you telling them what to do or how to do it.
I
Lead by
agree.
example. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So what types of business are you in, and will you tell us a little bit about Interact Marketing and
Sure.
what you
So
specialize
we
in?
are a full service digital marketing So that basically means not TV, not radio, not print, right? Although we do dabble in video because it's important for social, but we'll basically design and program websites, and then we market products and services online for our clients, primarily using search engines, so organic rankings on Google, Yahoo, and Bing. We're also a Google partner, an ad partner for paid ads that you see in search engines. And then we do a lot of retargeting as well. So once people have engaged or visited your website for your brand, we're the ones who schedule and put up those follow-up ads. So now you start seeing that company or product wherever you go online. And eventually just tracking and monitoring what are the best sources of traffic and sales for an organization. And the process differs slightly from in a product or business to consumer world, as opposed to business, which is mostly lead generation. And then there's a whole follow-up in that back end of that funnel, converting leads into sales. We help clients with that as well. So ultimately, we try and not be a marketing cost center, but a profitable marketing initiative for the majority of our clients. And that's what keeps them coming back. I've done this now for probably the last 20 years of my career. And then it was about 10 or 12 years prior to that where I started as a web programmer, more on the tech side. And that's how I came up through the .com boom in technology, and then made the shift in about 2002 to digital.
So what have you, like, over the last 6 months, over the last 5 months, how has marketing changed for your customers?
Yeah, that's the big it depends answer, right? So we have some clients who are just thriving through this period because they were not a COVID impacted industry. We have a lot of attorneys, that's the case. A lot of product sales, that type of thing. We've got other clients that are in restaurant, automotive, summer camps, where they've gone from everything from, complete shutdowns to like pickup only, or like in the case of some of those camps, like they had to cancel their entire season. And so we've been working with clients that are impacted. We made some modifications to contracts, allowing them to pause for a month or two if they needed to. We rewarded clients that stayed with us through this period. So if they continued marketing, we loaded up 10 or 20 hours of extra service into their account. We did breakout sessions with them on how to creatively market during COVID. And so we feel like I'm more interested in those clients, making it through this time and then getting back to a level of success with us than just shutting down and not doing stuff. Generally, I feel like you can't abandon marketing altogether. I mean, I think that for the majority of clients, our recommendation was to pull back on ad spend and media, but to continue working on organic search efforts, which are a more long-term strategy, and certainly to remain in communication with their customer base on a regular basis on social and email. As we've started to come out of this here in New York, because we were one of the kind of first in and kind of first out of this crisis now, and hopefully that trend will continue. We're in the third or fourth phase of our reopening here. We've gotten calls from probably half a dozen clients in the last week saying, the phone's ringing off the hook. I don't know what to do. I think I need to slow down the advertising right now because we can't keep up with it. And generally speaking, these have been like contract services like roofers, sheetrockers, swimming pool installers, things like that. So it's always, I think that's a good problem to have. Like, I can't keep up with it. Can you slow down the results? It's, we sometimes have clients that fall into that, but to have, 5 or 6 of them in a week needing to put the brakes on. And I think that's just a lot of pent up business that they would have had earlier in the season. And so for a lot of those types of industries, they're looking to have record years still, despite the fact that they're working, double time these next few months to make that happen. So
That's
they're
great.
all good positive signs, I think, of the economy starting to come back.
That's
Unfortunately,
great.
I know some business owners that are completely impacted by this, and those would include people like in the live event space, who were either hosting live events or somehow managing sporting events, live events, etc. And for the foreseeable future, they don't have a leg to stand on really with generating revenue in the traditional sense. And a lot of them are trying to shape shift and see if they can apply their services and technologies in other ways. They're being forced to innovate or just look at maybe getting out for now and waiting for things to recover. So I feel really bad. And I think it's going to be a long, long time before this economy is fully recovered. And I think the stock market is over exuberant and not really reflecting the way things are in the real economy right now. And I think it's likely that we'll probably continue into a recession, even if it was partially triggered by COVID. It was probably due soon anyway, because we were at the end of a 12-year bull run there. So like Tony said, you got to be prepared for winter. And, on my personal finances and stuff, I'm really glad I got some of that education because I had some cash sidelined. I was prepared for the pullback, and it's really the best you can do. You can't time it perfectly, but you can at least start to understand the cycles and how these things are impacted, and kind of always be prepared for winter to come. It's the third time in my career I've had to do it. I suffered greatly in the .com boom, big financial hit. I started this business in 2008. 3 months later, we were in the worst economy in history, and I had to pull through. So it's kind of like a little bit like old hat now, getting ready to, prep for the next fallout. But the good news is between those periods, there's always periods of strong growth and opportunity. And so for someone starting a business now, it'd probably be a really good opportunity.
And each one of those struggles or hard times that you've made it through made you stronger for the next one and the next one. So it's like you're not too impacted. One of the words that keep coming up when you speak is creative, being creative. And we talked a little bit before we started about your on the personal side creative, but so you've had to really get creative. I mean, marketing is creativity in and of itself, but you've had to really change some things and be creative and use your creative mind to help your clients. But at the same time, that's spilled over into your personal life, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
I've kind of always been a split brain. Like I did well on both the math and the English on the SATs. And like, if you look back at checkpoints in my life, I was, when I was 15, let's say, I joined my first rock band and started growing my hair out. And I thought it was really cool. And I'm going to be a rock star someday. And then at the same time, in the same year, I started a computer club at my local high school because we had no computer club, and recruited, 7 other geeks to join me. And I was their fearless, nerdy leader. And I had a Commodore 64. I was like one of the first people to have a modem. And this was like probably 1985 or so. We were connecting online and meeting people on this thing called the bulletin board system, which once a night, the bulletin board system would dial out to the internet and actually send internet email. So like you could send email to people in California and maybe 2 or 3 days later they could get it. So I met a lot of people during that time online, which was absurd for the time, including the person who introduced me to my wife, which was interesting.
Wow.
So I tell people, I met my wife via an online connection, and they're like, "Oh, that's sweet." I'm like, "Yeah, it was, 1988 or 1989." And they're like, "What?" So I've always had this kind of split between creativity and kind of geeky computer stuff. And when I saw the internet emerging, like right as I was getting out of school in the mid 90s, I'm like, this is going to be for me, because it was really a perfect mix. You do need creativity on the design side and the messaging and marketing side. And then nowadays, even with audio, video production, that type of thing. So it's right in my wheelhouse. But I still get to geek out on some JavaScript and CSS and Visual Basic and all that good stuff. So it's, for me, it's the right mix. For people in our company, they're either also split brains, as I call it, or they're really dedicated to one passion. So, you know, we may have people that are just purist right brain design types, and you know, we have people that are just programmers, and we do the disc analysis as part of our hiring process, and you'd be really surprised to see the rogue differences between those. But we use them so that, you know, people can get an understanding of other people that they work with and still work in a peaceful manner.
Yeah.
Man.
So
Joe,
yeah,
you're an interesting dude, man.
You
one
are,
thing I want to hear
definitely.
about that we haven't talked about yet is this whole thing has led up to your revamping of your piano playing. Tell us a little bit about that, because you have a setup, man. You have a setup. So you went, I seen the progress online where you went from just a little keyboard and now you got like this whole full-blown studio, if you
Sure.
will. All right.
Yeah, so most of that was packed up for 15 years. Like my synthesizers and stuff are what we call vintage by today's standards. So I played piano. I played trumpet was my first instrument, because you had to pick something. And I stuck with that from like third grade all the way through about junior year of high school, including marching band and other stuff like that. So I still have it away. I could probably pick it up, but it wasn't really my passion. So then I said, well, I heard somebody playing, I think it was Journey or something like that, when I was in 5th or 6th grade on the school piano. And I'm like, wow, that's cool. And I was into like Van Halen and a lot of hard rock bands that still had some keyboards. Back in the 80s, we had keyboards with our hard rock.
Mhm.
So I asked my mom, can I take some lessons? And she first hooked me up with the church organist was giving lessons locally. And so it was a combination of scales, hymns, and classical, which was okay. I was into the scales and stuff. And then on my own, I would learn other songs by ear. I had a good sense for music, and I had a pretty good ear for, you know, hearing something and being able to replicate it. But after like 2 years of that, it just got dull. So I said, I need somebody who's kind of hipper. So we asked around, we found another local teacher. And so she'd let me do 4 rock songs for every hymn or classical that I learned. It was like a trade-off. She's like, you need to get, you know, become a disciplined musician, but I'll bring it in. So she used to bring the sheet music and say, do you like any of these? And little by little, I started picking those out. And, you know, that's when I really got into it. My mom bought an upright piano for my sister and I, and that's what we had up until about 10th grade. And then I saved up, I think it was like $1,500 my sophomore year of high school to buy a real synthesizer at the local music store. And the day I was there, like playing with it before I made my final decision, the coolest dude from school, who's like the lead guitar, Eddie Van Halen guy, who's still a good friend today, Ryan Ball, shout out. He came over and said, were you just playing Led Zeppelin, Misty Mountain Hop? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you want to be in a band? I'm like, yeah. And so I joined a hard rock band in high school, and I was they played a lot of guitar stuff, but like I got to participate maybe on 25% of the songs, and I was like the keyboard / smoke machine guy. But it was good enough for me at the time, and I had a real passion with it. And then all through college, I was in bands, and you know, nothing super serious, you know, a combination of covers and originals and stuff like that. So that's where I got a lot of that equipment when I was in that phase. And then, you know, you get married, take a job in the city, you have 3 kids. The dream of music started to fade a bit. 2, 3 years ago, I was out on a visit with a friend who's an entrepreneur, and he's like, oh, you got to come to this place on Long Island. I know a guy, his family owns a airport hangar, and he owns like 10 or 12 planes. He has a flight school, and he does chartered jet stuff and things like that. He's the coolest guy. You got to meet him. So we went in, and we went upstairs in the hangar, and he had this crash pad. So you walk in and you see a 50 or 60-inch monitor with his computer. And then behind it is like a pile of laundry, and then like keyboards, guitars, a bed, you know, all this. Like, it was just like this awesome man cave in the middle of this airport hangar. And I had just done some Tony stuff, and I'm like, that was like on a Friday. By Sunday night, I had taken my old keyboards. I bought a couple of big TV monitors, and I built what is now known as the command center at work. And it was based on this rough principle that anything that you want to be a part of your life should always be within your reach. And later it came to be the 20-second rule, which my mentor, Chris Jones, taught me. He's like, if you need to eat healthy, work out every day, work on a computer, do all the things you're doing, you better have everything you need to get your day done within 20 seconds of where you sit, right? And so that's why to this day I have treadmills at the office, rebounders. We stock fruit, we stock healthy food, because if you don't plan it, you're going to end up eating cheeseburgers at 3 o'clock when you haven't eaten all day, and doing a lot of the bad things I've done throughout life.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Such
kind of
great
how it started. And then COVID just put me over the top, bro. It was just, I have a lot of free time. I'm like, oh, once I started bringing out the old equipment, I was playing Billy Joel stuff, and then I wanted a band, and there was no band. So I found a karaoke site where you could download backtracks and play along with them. I did a few of those with video, and then I said, "Oh, let me try a Depeche Mode song." And trying the one Depeche Mode song led down this rabbit hole of like 200 hours of, first performing them and doing a video, then wanting to do my own backtracks, then researching the band and realizing that Alan Wilder, who was like one of their big influential producers and keyboard players, who left the band in '95, which is around when I stopped listening to them. He released all their original keyboard sounds at an auction in 2011. So now I realize I had all those sound libraries I could replicate. So I'm starting a cover band where we have a full range of instruments at the office. Our designers, our bass player, our other lead designers, a drummer. So now we can like have a jam break at the office and let off some fun stuff.
I love that.
And all
So
within
great.
20 seconds of reach. All within.
So
I love
great.
that. That
I
20
love
second
that
thing,
advice.
dude. That
Yeah.
was so good.
Really
again.
good.
I'm going to be doing live performance of some sort again, because I felt like it was a missing passion. And just because I didn't choose it as a career doesn't mean I can't still enjoy it. And I think that's what my lesson learned was here. It's like, if you're really passionate about something, a hobby, an art, live it out, go make sure you keep time for that in your life as well, if that's what gives you joy.
Wow. I don't think we could end on a better note.
No, that was
That's
great.
profound.
Yeah,
I'm taking that advice.
That's so good, man. And the 20-second rule, that's so good too. And
Mhm.
everything you just said just totally resonated. So thank you so much, Joe Beccalori, for joining us today. Keep rocking it, man. I look forward to seeing you at a Tony event soon. And man, keep us posted, keep us updated.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. I'm so glad that I met you at I think it was Dallas UPW, Ricardo.
Yeah, dude, it's been pretty awesome getting to know you. And man, I've gotten a kick watching you go from one little keyboard to all of a sudden this whole setup. And I'm like, man, look at Joe. Look at Joe. I was
Can't
like,
wait to see you perform. Yeah.
I'm like,
Well,
look at
thanks
Joe.
for having me, guys. I really appreciate you including me today, and I've been a big fan of your podcast and your group here. So you've come a long way in the past few years, and it's great to see your growth as well.
We appreciate it, Joe, and I'm sure that everything's going to be great with Interact Marketing. And where can they reach you at if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so we do offer a complimentary assessment to any new business, where we'll look at your website, we'll scan it for speed, security, search optimization, and make some recommendations, and that's free of charge. You can visit us at interactmarketing.com. And if you add a little /360 at the end there's a form where you can fill out and request that analysis. We're happy to help you out.
So that's interactmarketing.com/360.
You got it.
Cool. Thank you so much, Joe. And for
Thank
everyone,
you all. Have a wonderful day.
yes,
Thank you.
And for everyone tuning in, make sure you visit forceforgrowth.com to subscribe to the YouTube channel, the audio version of this podcast, and we'll be back on Monday with the word of the week. See everyone then. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.